Hi YouTube, in this video I'm going to show you how to paint this Banksia flower. I've got an actual photo of Banksia flower at the end of this video, or you can literally do exactly step by step what I'm just about to show you. Okay, so this is stage 1 of the drawing. Very simple, just do a very basic light outline to get the main kind of shape of the Banksia flower. For the second step, if you try and get the scale effect, so what you're doing is starting with the ones nearest the stem, do them like a sort of a row, and then work your way. So in between each scale you draw another scale, and obviously they increasingly get bigger. That's all you need to do for this next step. Okay, this is details of the stem. So you're just doing the row of thin bands next to each other with like little notches taken out of them, and then just trying to get a few kind of lines going down the stem to create a bit of texture. And these are the long petals. If you try and draw the ones that are closest to you first, and then tuck the other ones in behind those, that's a good way of doing this bit. And for the finer strands in the centre, again, keep your pencil lines light still, but try and match the curves and just concentrate on the line thicknesses, trying to keep them really quite thin. Okay, with all our main shape drawn in nice and pale, we can now start to darken some areas. So have a look at the lines I've darkened here. It's mainly little corners and edges. It's not dark everywhere. Don't feel you've got to blacken the outline of everything. Just have a look at this and try and match what I've done in this image. Now for the next step, which is the shading, I use a 2H pencil for this. The reason for that is an HB I find quite smudgy, and if I rub my hand over it, it just smudges everywhere. 2H is a lot finer. It means you can get a lot more detail into it. You can get your darks really quite dark just by pressing hard still. So it's the ideal pencil, and I use a mechanical pencil to do this as well. Take your time on this, because once this is done, this gives a really good base for putting your watercolour washes on later. The watercolour washes, whenever I do a watercolour painting that I want to be really detailed, I always start it like this in pencil first, because I find it easier to blend with a pencil than I do to blend with the paint. And also I think the grey from the lead adds a bit of realism to it, makes all the colours a bit more kind of natural. Okay, this is the shadow underneath the flower. This is just about trying to keep your pencil pressure even to try and get the right tone. Hopefully you were able to blend the flower well. It's all about just practicing different pencil pressures to get different tones. And you're trying to kind of imagine it a bit like a black and white photograph when you're doing this. Okay, this is the first stage of the watercolour. This is just yellow ochre applied to the strands in the centre. Just go halfway up the strands. Okay, this is the second part of the watercolour stages. If you just apply raw sienna as a flat wash to the scaly part of the flower head. Okay, for the stem, if you mix raw sienna with a tiny bit of sepia, this is quite a light mix with quite a lot of water, and that is applied just as a flat wash to the stem. You can also add a Payne's grey wash underneath for the shadow. Just apply it over your pencil. Okay, if you mix raw sienna with a little bit of English red, and then you're just applying this sort of reddish colour to any patches where you can see this sort of red colour in the actual photo. So it'll be like little dips in the stem and just edges quite often on the scaly sections as well. and also to the tips of the longer petals. Okay, this is adding the purplish colour to the middle part of the flower head. So I use violet, but violet on its own is really strong. So if you mix it in with the violet, a tiny bit of English red, that kind of neutralizes the purple a bit. And you're just applying this to the tip of the middle of the head and just trying to kind of soften it and blend it in so it gets a bit lighter as you work your way in. Okay, this is about really starting to up the contrast. So if you mix some sepia and make it really quite dark, so lots of pigment, hardly any water, and this goes right into the tips. You could switch to a very, very small brush for this, and then you're trying to kind of blend it away from those corners just a little bit. But yeah, concentrate on corners and edges and maybe like tips of the petals and things. Okay, I now use a mid-brown, maybe burnt umber or Mars brown, something like that, just to go in and try and get a few more of the mid-tone shadows. So go over a lot of your pencil work that you've done and just try and blend to soften it all in. Okay, the final stage, I just add little hints of subtle colours. So on this one I used very, very small amounts of that violet mixed with English red, really watery, like very, very pale, just little hints added here and there to strengthen it. Also you can use Payne's grey, again really watered down, just added here and there just to give it more strength, I guess, just to darken it up a little bit. One thing you can do as well at the very end is just add tiny bits of white, and I usually use white acrylic because it's brighter, just to pick out small highlights here and there. You don't have to do that, but that is a stage that I quite often will do right at the very end. And I use white acrylic just because it's much brighter than white watercolour. It takes a bit of practice applying it because white acrylic is quite thick. You need to learn how much water to add to it to get it to kind of flow, so it doesn't blob on. But without being too watery, you don't want to add too much water, otherwise it becomes too transparent and the highlight doesn't show up. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you've been able to do similar painting. I'm going to put some images on now for you to use. So the first one is a photo of this a Banksia flower. I think it is this one but in a different position. And then I've got a picture of a Banksia pod as well and a painting of a pod that I've done. So that may be something else you might want to try. Okay, so here's the photo that I took. It's important whenever you're taking a photo for a still life like this that you try and get it well lit so it's got good contrast. Strong shadows and strong highlights makes for a much better painting in the end. Okay, and this is a painting that I did of a Banksia pod. These are really nice pods to do actually. This one I've given quite a purpley shadow to. But I'll put up a photo and you can have a look at that, and that might be something else you might want to paint. Okay, this is a Banksia pod. These come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes, but I find them really interesting to paint. And also, what's really nice is if you've painted a Banksia flower, dried flower head, in your portfolio, it's really nice to have maybe like a double page of your portfolio, one where you've got the pod on one side and the flower head on the other. I'll put a materials list in the description for this video of everything that I used to do the painting that I was showing you today. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to view my other videos on YouTube because I plan to do lots of step-by-step paintings like this, and also hit subscribe, and then you'll be able to see anything that I post up in the future. There are also a couple of videos of my sort of entire portfolio and some of my best work, so give those a quick look as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.